Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's talk. My guest today is Anna, and she suffered a severe concussion injury 4 years ago from a motor vehicle accident. Approximately 3 months ago, she discovered our online concussion recovery course, and I thought it would be great to record a call with Anna to shed some light on the challenges that we both have experienced with concussions over the past years and what has really worked for us with our concussion recovery journey. Now, Anna has since started a blog about her concussion recovery journey after having this serious injury 4 years ago to help others understand that they aren't alone if they're struggling with post concussion symptoms. And she shares her experiences in the UK medical system, as well as what's worked and what hasn't worked over the past 4 years for her. Now, you can follow her on Instagram at lovebrainreset1 or read her blog posts at lovebrainreset.com. In today's video, you will learn the reasons why you must begin a concussion recovery protocol immediately after a head injury, the successes and the failures during her road to recovery. We'll highlight the main barriers that prevent people from experiencing a speedy recovery. We'll talk about her experience going through the concussion recovery course, which, by the way, is available at concussionrecoverykit.com. And we'll have a special limited time discount code at the very end for everybody that sticks around for the whole video. And that will give you a 30% discount off the regular price. We'll also discuss how a concussion could be a blessing in disguise and the importance of mindset during recovery. And you'll also learn a bit about exercising after concussion and why it's extremely important that you continue to push your boundaries while you're healing. This is all really valuable information that you will get for free today. Regardless if you are young or old, or if you just had a concussion yesterday, or perhaps it was a few months ago, I guarantee this information will be valuable for anyone who's had a concussion in the past. So without further ado, let's bring Anna on and begin our discussion on concussion recovery. Well, thanks for joining me on this call, Anna.
Okay.
I'd love if you could just sort of share a bit about yourself and why you're here today.
Okay, so I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I'm a mum. I've got three children, 12, 10 and 7. And I'm married to Alex, who's a business analyst, IT business analyst. And we live in near Ipswich in Suffolk in the UK. And I home educate my children, so I'm quite busy with that, and we've just started term, so back to sort of ferrying them around to various activities and things like that. And yeah, I mean, we met through your course. So I had a concussion 4 years ago, and have been sort of getting my life back on track ever since then, really. So I took your course and thought it was brilliant, and so here we are talking today.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad that we're able to have this conversation and that we're able to, share kind of our own experiences with concussions and what we've both sort of learned throughout going through the course. And hopefully that it can help some other people as well that are going through the same issues. So can you tell our audience a bit about how you got this first concussion and kind of what struggles you had with it?
Okay, so I had a car accident in November 2016, and it was a rear end collision. So a big 4x4 vehicle drove into the back of my car, and it was winter time. It was pitch black. I was sitting in heavy traffic at a roundabout and had my handbrake on, and I was just sitting there with my 3-year-old daughter in the car, minding my own business, listening to a story tape, and out of nowhere, boom! I just got hit from behind, and I kind of thought an explosion had gone off. I didn't know what happened, to be honest. It was so out of the blue, and I was so shocked. And yeah, I was quite shaken by it. But then kind of realized that it wasn't, luckily we were able to pull over into a lay-by. And I realized that there wasn't particularly that much damage to my car. And I sort of did, exchange details, insurance details with the other driver and drove home. And sort of thinking, I've just had a bit of a bump, really. I mean, more than a bit of a bump, because it was a big hit. But I've been in minor car accidents, probably, I think I've had about 3 before then, and nothing sort of ever, came of it. So I kind of figured it was kind of going to be the same sort of thing, really.
Gotcha. Yeah, we have in one of the lessons, Dr. B talks about sharing a story that one of his paramedic friends was talking about, where it's a very small hit from behind or a very small collision that looks like it shouldn't really be that big of a deal, but
Yeah,
sometimes the person who's hit actually ends up having like a fatal accident where they actually
absolutely.
pass away. And
Yeah.
it all has to do with what exactly happens to the person inside the car. Like, did they smash their head? Did their
Mm-hmm.
head rotate? Like, there's all these different factors that can go into it, as well as how heavy is the vehicle that's colliding with you versus how
Absolutely.
heavy is your vehicle. Like,
Yeah.
it could be a bowling
Yeah.
ball running into a cue ball, and people think
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, like they're only going 5 kilometers an hour, there shouldn't be that much
Mm-hmm.
damage or that much injuries. But when you have 10 times the weight crashing into something that's a tenth of the weight, that momentum is going to be exponentially increased on the person who's receiving that hit from behind. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's like, I've worked in the insurance industry for a long time, and there's all kinds of stories of, oh, like I just barely bumped the guy and now he's claiming all these injuries and stuff. But it really depends on exactly how the person's situated in the car, if they're ready for it or not. There's a whole bunch of different factors that can go into it. And
Definitely. And I've come across other people who've had exactly the same type of accident, and those hits from behind like that really can do quite a lot of damage. It is surprising, but the more you kind of hear those similar stories, you're just like, oh my gosh, they're really, that can be a lot worse than you think it would be. So
definitely.
yeah.
So, what has been most frustrating about the recovery process uh, in the local healthcare system there in the UK?
So when I look back overall, it's been a mixed experience. So I've had some really negative experiences, but I have also had some really good ones. And I wouldn't have got to where I am today without certain people helping me along the way. So I had some really great physios, a neurophysiotherapist, an osteopath, a neuropsychologist, a neurologist, a number of people who were just wonderful. And I've probably forgotten some of them. But especially initially, I really had a tough time. And I think my experience is not unique. I mean, I think it's a fairly common experience, actually. And so when I first went to the doctor it was about 4 days after my injury that I did go to a doctor before then, but anyway, when I realized that something wasn't right with my head, at first I thought it was just a shoulder injury, a sort of soft tissue shoulder injury, but it just got worse and worse over time. And I got to a few days later and I literally could hardly walk, and I was dizzy and I was staggering about and I couldn't remember things. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? This is awful. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor said to me, he was just my local GP, so you have about 10 minutes with them. And he said to me, you've got a concussion, you've got a shoulder injury, and you've got a concussion. And I said, oh, my eyes are a bit funny. I'm seeing not kind of double, but just I was having problems focusing. And he got me to do like a reading test. And then he said, oh, I think you probably need a new prescription for your, I've got contact lenses. And he said, oh, your prescription's probably a bit out of date. And so he said, you've got concussion. And then he said, right, here's the card for a physiotherapist. Go and get some physio. And that was it. And then I had to go back in and get some painkillers, because I'd forgotten that actually one of the reasons I was so much pain that I couldn't, the sort of normal pills weren't helping with that. So he gave me some painkillers. And then that was kind of it, really. I was kind of left to it. Now, I couldn't actually drive. I couldn't get to go and have physio. Luckily, a friend of mine came and gave me some physio at home. So that was great. But then a few months later, I was still really, really struggling. I was having sort of rested quite a lot. I was then trying to get back into my normal life and do normal things and do a bit more driving and stuff. And one day I was driving my children we were going to go and see a little play in town, and I was on a roundabout and I had a panic attack, really bad panic attack, and I just thought, I can't get home, this is awful, I can't get to the theatre, I can't get home. Luckily there was a police headquarters actually like right next to the roundabout, so I just drove in there and went and said, help. I was standing on the doorstep crying, just I can't get home. And they brought me home and were fantastic. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's something, I've got to go back to the doctor. So I went back to the doctor, and I had actually looked up online after a few weeks of not figuring it out, and I started researching a bit about concussion, and I found the website of Headway, that is a brain injury charity in the UK. Got some leaflets from them. So I went to the doctor with these leaflets and I said, look, I think I think this is happening. I've got all these like post-concussion type symptoms. and he took my blood pressure, which was kind of really high, and I was literally having panic attacks in the doctor's office. And he said, okay, fine, here's some pills, and off you, and we'll sign you up to get some anxiety training, and have some, and he gave me Prozac. And I didn't know at the time, but when I was with my solicitor a couple of years later and they got all my notes and everything, he hadn't even written down the note in my medical notes that I'd had a concussion. And he put down from that appointment, he put, rather than like saying, oh, post-concussion symptoms, he put anxiety with adjustment disorder to my, what happened to me. So I only found that out later. But anyway, I ended up going back to the doctor a couple of times, getting given more pills that I didn't want to take. I started to feel really rubbish on the Prozac. I couldn't drive. I felt so exhausted and kind of like a zombie. And then I sort of pushed and pushed to get a neurologist appointment. And so that was sort of 8 months later. And then the neurologist didn't really know what to do with me because I didn't have nothing showed up on scans. And I did actually, a small bleed showed up, but he didn't think it was related. And I finally got some help with a neurophysiotherapist, but that was kind of a good year after my accident. And then I went back to the neurologist. I took my husband for some kind of moral support, and I did ask to be referred to a brain injury kind of unit, which he did. But then it took another 3 or 4 months to kind of get there. When I rang them and I said, will you see me? Because I'm not like really serious, because they normally saw more serious people. And they said, well, people like you tend to sort of slip through the net. And they did agree to see me, but then fortunately my solicitor I got a great solicitor, and she had organized some other care for me to see a neuropsychologist and neurologist. So I kind of went down that route. So there was a lot of frustration in the beginning. I mean, there's more, there's more of it, but that's kind of in a nutshell, really. My first kind of year essentially was really frustrating.
Yeah, no, and your story is so similar to so many other people. Like, the one thing about your story is that because you were involved in a car accident, you had a bunch of support from, both the insurance company who's providing a lot of the services, I guess, right? So you were able to find a lot of these people that, were
Yes.
very skilled, and you could go to all these different, meetings and stuff, and they were all paid for. One of the things with some of my head injuries, and I had a very similar situation as yours, where it was multiple years of seeing all these different specialists, all these different physios, neuro people, everything, and nobody could really figure out what was going on, yet I was still having post-concussion symptoms. And then all these minor bumps were giving me more and more concussions, and I couldn't, I was at the stage of like, do I have to just completely quit sports, like, or anything where I could potentially get hit in the head with a ball, or body checked or something like that. And what was really challenging in my situation was my injuries were from hockey, and in hockey, like, you can't really sue the other person. Like, we aren't a very litigious people here in Canada. Like, you probably can in the US, but here in Canada, like, you pretty much are on your own. You got to pay for all your own, medical. You gotta try and find all the people yourself. You don't really have that support network that you generally do when you're involved in a car accident. So for me, it was really challenging, because after you spend a year or two seeing all these different people, and you're spending all this money and nothing seems to be working, you kind of get discouraged, because you don't really want to spend another $80 for another session. Just to, have the guy say, oh, I think you have a concussion, or they misdiagnose it with, you're suffering from anxiety, when they don't know when anxiety is related to the concussion or the overstimulus that's going on in the brain. And so it was really frustrating in my situation, because after 3 to 4 years I had my first concussion when I was 11 from ice hockey. And when I was about 14 or 15, I finally got referred to the Vancouver Children's Hospital, and they wanted to do an MRI on my brain to see what was actually going on inside, because at that point I had probably 3 or 4 concussions already. And after that first one, it just became really easy for me to get concussions. Like, if I got hit in the head with a dodgeball, I get a concussion.
Yes, you're a lot more sensitive to it, I guess, after several. Yeah,
and then I had the same scenario as you, where they did the MRI, they did all the scans and everything, and then the guy was like, well, we don't really see anything wrong, you should be fine. But inside, I'm like, I'm not fine. There's something going on. What? You can't tell me I'm fine. Like, You got to
I
look
know, and
deeper or something.
you feel so helpless, don't you? Because, you know, and you almost feel like I don't think they mean it necessarily. I think they just don't know. And so you end up feeling like you're making it up, or, you know, am I really feeling this? And then you're like, yes, but then you can't get anyone to kind of validate that and to help you. You're just desperate for someone to help you. I mean, I'd never been to a doctor before, I think, and, you know, not come away sort of knowing what to do next, really. You know, I sort of assumed that I'd just go to the doctor and he'd be able to sort me out and give me something for it, and boom, I'd be better in a few weeks or a few days or whatever. And I could not have known that cascade of events and the time that it would take to
Mm.
heal, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that you mentioned was like when you had those meetings with the doctors, you only got like 10 or 20 minutes, and you're going to spend 80% of that time explaining your story to them, and then they might go, okay, like, I have 2 minutes now to prescribe you
Yeah.
something. And what kind of value are you actually getting from that person, and how do how much information they've actually looked at regarding concussions, and when was the last time they actually looked at the recent scientific studies that are coming out. And so that was one of the main reasons that we really wanted to put together this course, was
Yeah.
because in my own personal experience, I had so many problems. And then Dr. Blaskovich, he also had a lot of issues throughout college when he was playing football, with the team doctors, misdiagnosing what was going on, and just nobody being able to figure out what was going on. And once he became a doctor, then he started, because he had all these issues, he kept looking deeper and deeper and deeper into it.
Mm.
And because he has that very high level knowledge of the subject, he was able to really narrow it down to like, okay, I think it's these couple specific things that these doctors are just completely missing, or not even
Mm.
looking for at all. So that's one of the main reasons why we really wanted to create the course. Was we wanted to create a separate resource that would be low cost and easy for people to afford, but would be able to provide like hours of information that you're not going to get from the 20-minute session with your doctor. And I think education is really the most important part of concussion recovery, because I just saw a stat the other day that like 50% of Canadians don't even really know like what a concussion is or what the symptoms of a concussion are. And I've seen so many times throughout playing hockey, like friends that have got serious hits like to the head and stuff. And I'm like, you definitely probably have a concussion. And they're like, oh no, I'm good. And they just keep playing the game and just continue on with their life and literally don't do
Don't
anything
realize. Yeah.
about healing, trying to heal a concussion, or even realizing it. So Anna, you recently purchased our online course. Can you tell us a bit about your experience and what you've discovered in the online concussion recovery course that you may not have discovered from your doctors?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, it was great. I came to the course, it was a few months ago, so kind of 3.5 years after my accident. And I wish I'd found it straight after my accident, basically. I did my own research. Like I said, I was lucky to have some people to help, but I also did a lot of research online myself around diet and various sort of natural modalities for healing a concussion. And I slowly pieced the puzzle together and put it together, and kind of came up with a bit of a plan and moved forwards. But you've put that all into a course. You've condensed. As I was going along and listening to it, I just keep thinking, wow, that's so fantastic. Wow, that kind of validates what I had found out. And that just hearing that from yourself and from Dr. Blaskovich as well, with your own experiences and with his medical background, it was just so validating of like, oh gosh, yes, I've done some of the right things. But then there was also a lot more that I didn't know about and that I hadn't done. And so for me, particularly at that point, what really, really massively helped was information around the neck, and how a neck injury can then give you all sorts of kind of symptoms that affect you cognitively as well. And I realized that for me, that was feeding into some of the symptoms that I was having. And I think one of Dr. Blaskovich's specialties must be around trigger point therapy. And although I had looked into that a bit myself a year previous, I wasn't really quite sure how it worked, and I had found it quite effective, but I probably wasn't doing it quite right. But this course really explains everything about that, and also exercise. There's a lot of really helpful information about exercise, and you give a lot of that information yourself. And I was able to make a lot of progress over the summer, really,
Awesome.
thanks to the course. So
That's
Yeah.
really great to hear. What would you, or sorry, in your opinion, like what did you find most interesting about the course?
I mean, I think for me that, I mean, it's all interesting because since having my condition, I just find the whole topic really fascinating anyway. But I think those are the key things for me. That sort of trigger point therapy and the exercise. I mean, there's so much, there's loads of other things, but I'll just pull out those two things,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so frightened of moving and triggering symptoms. I think this is, again, I think this is quite common that every time your symptoms kick in, you're fearful and then you kind of retreat, and then that keeps your world quite small.
Mm-hmm.
And you get tired, and I would get pain, and then I'd think, oh, I can't do that because it's making it worse. And actually realizing that you can keep pushing and keep doing the, keep taking that ground, and don't sort of be too fearful of your symptoms. Like, obviously be sensible, but to learn that sort of self-awareness, um, and then not to be kind of fearful of that actually exercise, if it's done correctly, is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And will get blood flow to the brain, and get your heart going and get the endorphins going, and also just with the trigger point therapy, being able to alleviate some of the pain. So over the summer I was able to go hiking in the hills with my family. I mean, really steep hills, kind of going up and down, several miles a day. We did that for a whole week. And then when I came back, I was able to do, I took on a challenge to raise money for Headway, and I took on a 26.2-mile walk, which is like a equivalent of a marathon, over a few weeks. And I thought we had a few months to do it, but I did it in a few weeks.
Nice.
And the more I did, the more I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And it kind of culminated in a 10-mile walk on one particular day. That I haven't done that kind of walking for about 13 or 14 years, since before I had children. So I'm probably fitter now, it sounds crazy, in some ways, than I've been for years. But I don't think I'd have had the confidence to do that if I hadn't learned the information from the course.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I really, really love to hear
Yeah.
that. And that's in my own personal experience, like I can relate to that because, when I had my first concussion, I went to see the doctor and he said, oh yeah, like you've got a concussion, just stay home and rest. And that's literally
Yeah.
like all he told me was just stay home and rest. So I stayed in bed for like 10, 11 days and like I could hardly get out of bed. When I did get out of bed, I had like intense symptoms. I could hardly even, like be upright long enough to go to the bathroom and then go back to bed without feeling like I need to just lay down on the floor and like get grounded again. And, nobody told me that you should be trying to get up and kind of going through that each day. And like you're having those symptoms, yes, it feels bad, but if you continue to work through that,
Mm.
eventually your body's going to compensate and you'll start to get better at it. But um, you know, all they told me was go home and rest. So I spent multiple days in bed just resting. And looking back on it now, after doing the year of research that we've done on this and really looking into rest and exercise and all that, I think that was probably one of the major causes of me having multiple years of concussion symptoms after that and being
Mm-hmm.
very susceptible to concussions because my first doctor, he just told me to rest when really that's contrary to what a lot of the science is saying, where they say, don't, you can rest for 1 to 3 days, but after 3 days, you want to start getting back up and start getting into moving and stuff. And it's almost kind of
Yeah.
like progressive overload when you're working out in the gym, where each day you want
Yes.
to push yourself just a little bit further, a little bit further.
Yeah.
And when those symptoms come up, um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's a sign that your body's not right, but you should still try and work through those as long as you're in a safe manner where you're not going to, have another hit to the head or,
Yeah.
potentially collapse and, smash your head on the ground falling down or something like that. So,
Yeah.
um, that was one thing that I found really interesting when we were doing the research was that like, year after year I was hearing from different doctors, oh yeah, just focus on resting after a concussion, but really it's not really the
It
best.
it's weird. It does seem counterintuitive to, when you're feeling so awful, to go and do stuff. But actually, if you don't, like you say, it happened so quickly that you became much weaker and couldn't do things. And I think that's what kind of has shocked me, actually, is how quickly you can get into bad habits or patterns that are negative, that are going to negative impact, and how unfit you get so quickly. It's the
Mm-hmm.
speed at which you kind of, if you don't keep doing certain things, then you will just kind of get worse, and then you kind of get stuck in a bit of a spiral. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the course kind of, you know, opens up so many things you can do to not get stuck in that sort of zone, really.
Yeah. And going back to you talking about, you know, you think you're feeling fitter than you have over the last 12 years or so. Like, I really believe that having a concussion is almost like a blessing in disguise, because it kind of, you know, forces you to adapt a more healthy lifestyle, to
Yeah,
adapt, you know, daily exercise, to really change up the food and drinks that you're intaking, and making sure that you're not, you know, taking these bad foods in, and that you're getting lots of nutritious foods. So, um,
definitely.
one of
Yeah.
like, a lot of people see concussions as a negative thing, but I've almost come to see it as, it's kind of like a blessing in disguise, where you're basically forced to adapt to this new
Hmm.
lifestyle, where you have to start eating better food, you have to start, you know, cutting out alcohol, that kind of stuff. So,
Definitely.
it's really
Definitely.
interesting to hear that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we can say that from this side of things. And, you know, I'm not 100%. I still have to manage things. But I've got the tools to do it. I know what I need to. If I've overdone it one day, I overdid it yesterday, and I've overdone it the last few days. But I know that's okay. I'm okay with it, because I know it's just fatigue, and I'll be okay. And I'm not sort of panicking about it like I used to, like, oh my gosh, I'm causing more damage. And so, but generally, yes, I mean, I agree with you. I feel kind of the same. I feel like now I've got to the level where it's not so intrusive, and I'm largely back to normal. I can look back, and I went through a journey of being very bitter and very angry and kind of mourning the loss of certain things. But where I've got to now, I'm really happy with my life, and I'm doing this blog, and I kind of almost want to just focus on concussions and things like that. I don't know why. That's kind of, I just want to share whatever I've learned with other people, really.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing connecting with people like you and so many amazing people on this journey. And I just have so much respect for other people who've had concussions, because I know what they've been through, and it is really tough and it is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, to see other people then kind of making good recoveries and then helping other people, that's amazing. You know, that's the kind of thing that makes the world a better place. So I've learned so much through this journey, and I'm grateful for many of the things I've learned, actually.
I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is recovering from a concussion right now, and they're debating whether they should buy this course or keep searching for a knowledgeable local doctor or a local specialist?
Yeah, I mean, I would just have no hesitation in saying buy the course, because it is so valuable. And even if you took one thing away, it's worth it. You know, it would be worth the price of the course. I mean, I think there's about 70 units, are there? I don't know. There's so many. There's videos. There's stuff you can read, and there's just so much covered. And even if you took one thing away that helped, that would be worth it. So yes, I mean, you know, I think it's a great price. I think it's beautifully put together. I love the way you guys present it. I also love the fact that you're so calm when you present that information. And, you know, I think if we've had a horrible journey of like no one understanding us and no one listening to us, suddenly to be listening to somebody who gets it and who explains it very calmly, and I had so many moments. I was like, oh yes, you know, someone gets it, someone can understand. I know where they're coming from. I'm sure they'd know where I was coming from, and that's quite calming for your nervous system. I think it kind of, you know, you're not feeling triggered all the time, like, oh, this person just doesn't get me. So that in itself is just really was really helpful, and I'm sure that's quite healing in itself. But you know, there are some good doctors out there. There are some great functional neurologists, and there are some great physios, and there are people online, and that whole concussion kind of world does seem to be growing. There is a greater awareness, and there are more and more people able with the knowledge to help people who've had concussions, and that's really, really exciting to see. But it's still it's still quite small relatively, and I think for most people, certainly in the UK still, it's very, very hard to get the right treatment, or it could take months. So you could be going from, you know, doctor to doctor, one specialist who specializes in this and someone else who specializes in that. But in the course, it's all put together. It's all there. You can access it day or night, whenever you want. You know, you can be cooking dinner and listening to it. You can be, you know, making time and sitting there listening to it, specifically whatever on your laptop or whatever. And it's just, it's just great. You can just, and then you can go back to it because you bought it, and you can go back to that information whenever you want. You've got it forever, really. So you can
Hmm.
refresh if you need to.
Yeah, you made a couple of really good points. Because one thing that really stuck out was, like when I went to go see doctors, I'm concussed at the time, right? So my memory isn't very good, my cognition isn't very
I
good,
know
and
that so well.
how much
It's awful.
how much are you actually going to
Yeah.
remember from, the conversation with the doctor? And and going back to your other point was, it might take you a month or 2 months of bouncing around to different doctors till you find a really
Mm.
good one who actually knows what he's talking about and actually understands your situation. And what I don't think a lot of people understand is just how fast brain damage actually begins to
Yes.
happen after.
Yeah.
Like I was reading one study where they administered high doses of omega 3s to
Yeah.
patients, and they found that if they did it within the first 1 to 3 hours, it made a significant difference than if they even did it just say like 12 hours or 24 hours after the incident.
It
And
is amazing. It is amazing how much more effective treatment is earlier on,
yeah,
you know?
and I don't think a lot of people realize how urgent it is
Yeah.
to find really good care and really start
Yeah.
working on this thing, like, within hours after it occurring. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people will go like, I'll give it a couple of weeks and we'll see how I feel. But by doing that, they're just kind of getting
The
started
delaying
3 weeks
things.
into it, where they're
Yeah.
starting to look for a doctor. And then they might, it might be a few weeks more until they see the next doctor, and then a few weeks more until
Yeah.
they see the next doctor. And then all of a sudden it's 3 months down the road, your brain's been degrading, all this oxidative stress has been going on inside the cell tissue, and just, a whole bunch of havoc's been wreaked on your brain.
Yeah.
And they're kind of just now getting to the point of, oh shoot, like I should have been on this a
Mm-hmm.
lot sooner, right? So that's another big benefit that I really wanted to include in the
Definitely.
course, was that,
Yes.
the immediacy of getting the information, and then also being able to review it multiple times, where you can go back and
Definitely. It's so
watch the
helpful
videos
to
over
have
and
that.
over
So
again.
helpful. Yeah. And obviously it is critical to, if you can get the help as soon as possible, but it doesn't, if you're listening to this and you haven't been able to do that, and you're, a few months or years down the line, you can make great progress. It will just take longer, but you can really learn those things and start to put them into practice, and they'll, you can really, really, make good progress.
Yeah, definitely. Like in my own situation, I've had more than 10 concussions. I honestly have lost track of how many. It's somewhere between 10 to 15. But, I didn't meet Dr. Boscovich until I think about 11 years after I had my first concussion. And just learning some of the stuff that he knows, as well as just putting together all the different information that I've learned over time through reading studies and stuff. I'll still experience some post-concussion symptoms, day to day, depending on what I'm doing. Like if I go ATVing and it's really jarring to my head, I'll have some
Mm-hmm.
post-concussion symptoms a couple days after that. But now I'm armed with the tools of knowing, okay, this is what's going on in my brain. This is what I need
Yeah,
to do to
exactly.
address it. And a couple
Yeah.
days later, the symptoms are gone and I'm back to normal
Yeah.
again. Whereas a
Yeah.
lot
No,
of
I
people will
totally
just,
relate to that. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people will just, they might experience that, and they just get, down on it, like, oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
screwed, like I'm always going to have these issues, and they might never actually seek out, the solutions.
Mm.
So I feel like we provide a lot of those tactics and sort of hacks that you can almost use
Definitely. Yes.
to kind of, tame things down whenever they reoccur.
Definitely. Yeah.
So at this point, I think it would be good to have a discussion about the main barriers that prevent people from healing from a concussion. Now, from my experience, I believe it boils down to three main things. Number one is the lack of understanding the severity of concussions and the long-term dangers of ignoring a concussion. Number two, I think it's a belief that the solution is outside of them, similar to what you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned previously in like a
Mm-hmm.
doctor or in some kind of pharmaceutical pill. And then the third thing is a lack of information or guidance around just concussion healing in general, and kind of just understanding how severe it is and how quickly they need to start, taking action. Would you agree with these points? And is there anything that you would add or subtract?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I, 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 I agree with all those things. And I think you need to be open to trying new things. I think if you think you're looking for a pill or you're looking for a quick fix, it's just not there. It is a case of putting things into practice regularly, and you have to put the work in. I mean, and you have to keep doing it. So you need a lot of patience, and it does take time, but you will start to see results. And you've got to, it is a mindset thing. It's kind of believing that you can get better. It's not giving up hope and not thinking I'll always be like this, or nothing seems to work, or, I think a negative, if you get very negative about things, that is going to slow down your recovery. And I think if you can, clear those things away, then it's going to really help. And also it can be very expensive. I mean, it can be really expensive trying to heal a concussion. I mean, I spent thousands of pounds one way or another. And so the course kind of will short circuit a lot of that. You may need to buy some supplements, or to spend a bit more on food, or to seek out some vestibular therapy or something, but at least you'll know what you need to do. You won't be kind of I was like a guinea pig. I would just experiment with hundreds of things, and some things would work and some things wouldn't. And to be able to just kind of take a shortcut, which is what the course helps you to do, is really great.
Yeah. So many people are just shooting in the dark, hoping something will work. But we really wanted to kind of, like, I've tried so many different things, and so has Dr. Boscovich, and we really wanted to just narrow it down to, like, okay, these are the 4 or 5 things that are going to be most effective for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Start with these, focus on these. If they don't work, then maybe start going out to these other things, branching out a little bit further. But really, this is kind of the core things that are really, the most important. Now, you mentioned mindset, and I think it's a good time to talk about mindset during recovery. So I know a lot of people become depressed or discouraged after concussion, and this can be a very difficult rut to get yourself out of, especially if they have symptoms that are slow to dissipate or that are lasting months or years. Now, I've been there multiple times throughout my life, and my question for you is, what has your experience been with regards to mindset during your concussion recovery?
I think, again, that is an ongoing part of, it's another tool in the toolbox, is knowing, your mindset is really important. And so then building things into that will help you. And I don't know, I mean, lots of sort of little, techniques, trying to think of positive things. I mean, that sounds so cliche, doesn't it? Positive, but thinking of what makes you happy. So, because when you grasp onto that, then you can kind of make more of that, as it were. And that really helps. So even if you're feeling, it's hard to say feel happy when you're feeling rubbish and you're in pain, or, your symptoms are just so overwhelming and you feel absolutely down in the dumps. But in that, just reach for something that makes you happy. Think of something that makes you happy. Think of something from your past or that you enjoy doing, and make some happy, draw on some happy memories or something like that, and do things, even if it's a little thing that makes you happy. And then just things like gratitude, thankfulness. I'm feeling rubbish, but I'm thankful that, I don't know, my kids are downstairs, or my husband's cooking me a meal tonight, or whatever, just those, building those habits into life. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I've done lots and lots of work on this. Again, I've found sort of meditation very helpful, and journaling, and really just taking a deep look inside myself, and letting go of lots of expectations. I mean, I have changed since before my concussion. I can't go back to doing some things, but actually I would look through stuff. I'd kind of go through what I did, how I was before my concussion, and sometimes think, well, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to tearing around like a loony, sort of driving around everywhere and trying to, sort of FOMO, fear of missing out, all those kind of, and it's like, actually, I'm really happy on a slightly more gentle, slower, more reflective, more in the moment kind of way of being. So I tried what my sort of healing and recovery, I've tried to incorporate the good from that into every day, and just say, well, this is how my life is now. And, if I'm kind of careful and I live in a certain way, that's going to minimize my symptoms and things. And I do miss some things, but I don't in other ways, because I have been able to go back to a lot of things. And some things I didn't want to go back to anyway, actually. Does that make sense? Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
With that? So
yeah, I've definitely experienced the same in my life. Like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I found that after having a few concussions that I became more introverted, where I didn't really want to go out to like the loud parties, or where there's tons of people talking, tons of environmental stimulus around. I liked just being around a couple people, just, maybe being in my basement, or, just out in the forest just by myself, walking around, like a lot more like sort of chill and like relaxing kind
Mhm.
of things. And have you experienced anything like that yourself?
Yeah, really similar. And, and I'm okay with that. I'm not like, oh, that's a worse version of me. That's just a different side of me that is more apparent now. And actually, I'm okay with that. And, sometimes I do like to be in bigger groups and things like that, but it is more stimulating. It is hard. Do find it harder maybe to follow certain conversations, stuff like that. But, if I want to be with those people, then I'll enjoy it, and I think that's another thing is knowing who you are, and learning just general self-awareness tools that actually it's really helpful to know anyway, whether you've had a concussion or not. But things about boundaries and things about relationships and things about I was a real people pleaser before. I was always saying yes to everything, and learning that it's okay to say no, or actually, do you know what, that person really, when I spend time with them, I don't, it doesn't make me feel great. They don't make me feel great. And whereas before I could I could kind of put up with that. Now I don't have the bandwidth for it anymore. But and so maybe you're a bit more selective about what you do and how you spend your time and who you spend your time with. I mean, just because you have to look after yourself at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So I kind of feel I've learned a whole load of self-care things, and mindset things that have really helped.
Definitely, yeah. And going back to mindset, I feel a lot of people when they have a concussion, they get discouraged, as you mentioned earlier, and they also might think, okay, I'm not able to function as well as I could at work or at school, or in sports. And like I found for myself, like when we were doing like high level hockey drills at practice, like I would sometimes it would just I wouldn't be able to follow the very intricate details of this drill. I'd
Hmm.
like get lost at some points,
Yes. Oh gosh, I
and then I
so know
get
what you mean.
frustrated at myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
like you're not as good as you were, like this kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And I feel like a lot of people get that same way with either being in school or with being in work. When they see their grades dropping, they may have been like an A student, and now they're getting C pluses and struggling to get to the B area. And they can get really, like, that was my own situation as well. Was I went from being a straight A student down to like low B's, C pluses, that kind of stuff, and I was really frustrated. Like, what is
Mm,
wrong with me? Like,
mm.
why can't I do this? It was so easy before. Why is it so difficult
Yeah,
now?
I had some
Concussion.
neuropsychological tests as well, and they showed I dropped right down. And I remember trying to do some like lumosity things, and it kind of gives you a score. And mine was so low, I was just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? This is crazy. So I know it is frustrating.
Yeah.
But
And
I think it does improve. You're not stupid because you've had a concussion. It doesn't make you stupid. It's just that it takes longer to do things. And, I don't know. I mean, because everybody's different. And I think, motivation is huge. So if you're motivated to do something, you will push through, and I think you'll find a way. But if you can't, if it's just, you can also try different ways of doing things. I've found, oh, that way doesn't work very well. But if I try a different way, I don't know if that's just creating a new pathway in your brain or something, that it's worth giving other ways of doing something a try, I think. But then I think at some level there, maybe you do have to kind of reach some kind of acceptance that maybe, certainly for now, you can't do a certain thing, or you can't do it as well. It's not to say you won't be able to in the future, so keep trying if you want to, but you might just find something else opens up, that you can go into a different area of that that field or whatever. I mean, I used to be a proofreader and editor before I had children, and there's no way I could go back to doing that level of detail work, because I'm always making mistakes now. It's a joke. And I got really upset about that at first, but I'm not that bothered anymore. I mean, I put out a post on Instagram the other day, and I put a spelling mistake, and I was like, that would never have happened. I was, like at one level I was quite embarrassed about it, and then I was like, oh, never mind, I've got brain injury. I've had a concussion. It's not the end of the world. But I'm really enjoying doing some creative stuff. I'm really enjoying doing some graphics, and I can just feel that I'm just going in a different direction. So I'm kind of taking what I can from what I used to do and what I've enjoyed doing in the past, and I'm forging a new way ahead. And I'm really, really enjoying that and learning new things. And I think when you learn new things, it's almost easier to learn some new things than it is to try and go back and do things you used to do. In some cases, I mean, I'm not I'm not saying always, but that's just been my experience anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I think, going along those lines, like it might be better for your mindset when you're trying new things, because you're feeling positive, like, oh, I'm learning new things, I'm getting better at this. Whereas if you're trying to go back and do the same things that you were doing before at the same high level you were doing them before, you'll get more
Yes.
frustrated at yourself.
Yeah,
You'll be like, I
definitely.
used
Yeah,
to be able
that's
to do this
true.
this well, and now I'm at like
Mm,
60%, and then you get frustrated at that. Whereas if you're just going
yes.
into completely new things, you're like, I can still learn and I can still, grow
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this, right?
definitely.
That's
Yeah.
another thing that we talk about in the courses is we have a discussion on mindset, and Dr. Blaskovich really recommends, focus on things that you really enjoy or that you find really interesting, especially
Mm-hmm.
while you're recovering. Like if you're stuck at home, resting and just doing sort of your daily exercises and you can't really go outside the house, like he recommends, listening to podcasts or books that are on a subject that you're really
Yes.
interested in, or maybe watching some
Yeah.
YouTube videos if it doesn't bother your eyes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think
Totally. No,
that's very
brilliant.
important. Yeah. So we're getting close to an hour here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you want to talk a little bit about exercise and why it's so beneficial for concussion recovery?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel we've discussed
We
that
talked
even
about it a
really in
little
a way,
bit.
haven't
Yeah.
we? And I
Yeah.
have just found it incredibly beneficial. And I mean, you're an athlete, so you know an awful lot more about it than I do. And actually, I mean, you cover a lot of it in the course, but it is, isn't it? I mean, perhaps you can just share a little bit now
For sure.
about why it is.
Yeah, so from my experience, like I've done a lot of different hockey training, and one of the best trainings that I did, it was like a 5 month training program for getting ready for junior hockey, and what a real emphasis was in that whole 5 month program was focusing on like strength training, but in situations where you're off balance or where your core is consistently engaged. And so I brought a lot of that knowledge and information that I learned over those 5 months into the course, um,
Mm-hmm.
such as doing, push-ups with your feet on a Bosu ball where you have that, that instability, or, doing squats where you're standing on some kind of, a pillow or, a Bosu ball or something like that, where there's always that aspect of, a bit of imbalance. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
really valuable for people that are trying to recover from a concussion, trying to do things where there's an element of balance that needs to be continuously worked on. And
Yeah.
you're not going to be going back to 100% of your weights. You might be doing 50% of what you were doing previously for in terms of the actual dumbbells, but by focusing on really making sure that you're really focusing on the balance aspect, and that you're not just in a very stable position where you're just doing shoulder presses or anything. You want to be
Mm-hmm.
like on one foot where you're trying to balance. Adding that element to your exercise when you're trying to recover from concussion will really help with the vestibular organ and other parts of the brain that are trying to get recalibrated for balance and coordination and that kind of stuff. We
Yeah.
also have some exercises in there that are really specifically not for weight training, but just retraining your coordination ability, because that's something that's all very, very often damaged after concussion, is your coordination ability. Like when I go back into hockey after having a concussion, having 5 or 6 weeks off, I would just feel kind of almost like a deer on ice out there for the first couple of
Mm.
weeks, because you're just trying to get back to the coordination and the flow of things. And so we've included a few exercises like punching a ball off of a wall where you're trying to coordinate and keep it within your area that you can actually control it and keep the flow going without it bouncing way off to the distance or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel adding those elements of instability and balance is really important whenever you're doing any kind of exercises, as well as spending time each day working on your coordination and regaining that coordination ability is very important.
Definitely. And I still feel I need some work. I mean, I'm pretty good now, but I do still need a bit of work on that. And especially if I get tired, I'll notice I'll sort of bang into doorways and things occasionally, not as much as I used to do all the time, but you're just not quite so spatially, I'm not quite so spatially aware, but you can retrain. And actually that's one part of the course that I would like to go back to and just have a bit more of a go with that sort of thing. And yeah, just try and work on that area.
Yeah. Awesome. So that pretty much marks the end of what I have on the agenda for our discussion today.
Hmm.
Is there any questions or things that you wanted to discuss before we wrap up?
I think we've covered a lot of ground. So I hope, people listening have maybe picked up some tips and also got a flavor of what the course is about and how helpful it is.
Yeah, me too. I thank you, Anna, for coming on the call with us today. It's been, very valuable sharing your experience. I hope a lot of people can relate to sort of the process that you've gone through with, searching for different doctors, doing the research on your own and that kind of stuff, as well as how you're able to shortcut a lot of the process by, buying our course and going through that. So I thank you for coming on the call and joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing so much.
Yeah, no
And
problem.
for putting that course together. It is brilliant.
I'm glad it was able to help you. Till we talk again next time.
Yeah. So Ethan, I just wonder if we should mention now, because we discussed if people want to purchase the course, if
Oh, yes.
they've listened to us. So
Yep.
you have a really amazing special deal that
Yeah. How
you
could I
can
forget?
offer. Yeah, we can
So,
absolutely. I think we should mention that now.
definitely. Yeah. So for anybody that's listening to this video, I've set up a special discount coupon. It's Anna67. If you just put that into the cart, that will take $30 off of the purchase price. So it's normally $97 US for the course. But with that special discount code, we'll bring it down to $67. And that's going to be valid until the 1st of October. So if you're watching this and it's before the 1st of October, please, do not hesitate if you think this is going to be valuable for you. But if it's after the 1st of October, unfortunately, the price is going to be back to the normal price. So if you think it's going to be good for, beneficial for you, we'd highly recommend checking it out. We have a 100% money back guarantee. If you try it out and you don't like it, then I'll 100% give your money back. No questions asked. So you really don't have anything to lose, only things to gain, and we're giving you off as well. So.
And I really do think that price is amazing. And I mean, I paid the $97 for it. And it's worth absolutely every penny and more. It's just a phenomenal amount of information there. And really, you're giving so much information for the price of, say, one or two visits, to a healthcare provider. So, people can use it alongside that or on its own or whatever way you want to use it. But you're providing phenomenal information and value. And I think I would highly recommend it to people. And I thank you for offering it at a special price as well. It's really generous. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we really wanted to kind of price it at, approximately what the cost of one specialist appointment is. But then again, we're giving, hours of information in the videos, and we've spent over a year compiling all this information together. So I believe it's really good value for
it is. It's excellent. And it's from the www.concussionrecoverykit.com, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Or there's a link in my bio on Instagram, and I will sort of put the word out as well. But otherwise, just go straight to your website. And there's the coupon, which is Anna67, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that's it. You said it earlier, but
yeah,
that's it. That's great. Thanks, Ethan.
All right. Thank you, Anna. I hope you have a great day.
And you too. Take care. Good to talk.